And that's summarized now Simon base. Simon base is doing the bishas begodim, putting on clothes. We'll read the Shulchan Aruch and summarize Shitz and Mishabur. So we saw in Sif Aleph, Le'yubash chalukah miyushav, Le'yikach chalukah v'yachnis boi, Rosh HaZorosa boi deni sheichev, Nimsa k'shiyokam shim mechusa. We saw that one should try and get dressed in a way that he doesn't have his body uncovered. So if he can get himself dressed under the sheets or in a gown, the exact way the Shulchan Aruch describes is not relevant nowadays because we don't wear chaluk like the Shulchan Aruch did. The idea is to try and get dressed without revealing parts of one's body. So if base, shouldn't say that I'm in a private place, an inner room, an inner chamber. Hashem is everywhere, His Shekhinah is everywhere, and He can see everything. Therefore, we have to act sneistically everywhere. In Sif Gimel, we saw Yedaktik b'chaluko leloivshe kedarko shelo yafech hapnim yalchut. So you should be careful to wear his, not wear any clothes inside out, because it's a good that people see it. And we mentioned, even though the Mishabur mentioned that it includes undergarments, we said that it's talking about undergarments that you can see the hems. If it's something that's completely covered, then the reason doesn't apply. The whole point is that people shouldn't see it.
What type of undergarments would people see the hems?
It seemed to have a long chaluk, which the bottom part they'd be able to see. That's what it sounds like. Then in Sif Daled we saw how to put on shoes. That the right shoe you put on first, and then the left shoe. Then you tie the left one, and then you tie the right. So the tying is in the opposite order. The reason for that is we said that always you put on the right before the left. Always you mechaber the right first. However, when it comes to tying, we tie the left first like we do with tefillin. So we mentioned therefore with a left-handed person, tying would take place in the opposite order, which is the same order as putting them on. So a left-handed person could put on his right and tie it, and then put on his left and tie it. And then how do you take off your shoes? We saw you take off the left one first. Again, we honour the right, so we want to leave the shoe on the right foot for longer. So we take off the left one first. And just before we turn the page, before I turn the page, let's just scan the Mishabur and talk about halachos we saw there. In Sif Kotten Aleph we saw how to try and be sneistic in a Beis HaMelchatz, which nowadays would mean the mikveh. We saw that he should try and take off his clothes as close as possible to the mikveh, to the shower. We saw that on his way back from the mikveh, when he's facing people, he should put his hand to cover his private area. But not when he's going towards the mikveh. When he's not facing people, then he shouldn't, because then it's as if he's embarrassed of his milah. We saw in Sif Cotton base, he shouldn't put his clothes underneath his pillow. It's kosher l'shikcha, causes forgetfulness. We saw also not to put on two clothes together, nor to read the writing on a grave. All these three things are kosher l'shikcha, cause forgetfulness.
So there's three again. Not under a pillow.
Not to put clothes. Yeah, not to sleep on your clothes. We said that if the clothes are under the pillow, the Mishnah says it could be it's okay. And he's not sure if there's something that's mafsik between the clothes and the head. It could be it's okay. But to use clothes as a pillow, using clothes as a pillow is kosher l'shikcha. Put clothes under the pillow could be it's okay. But not to use clothes as a pillow. Not to read the ksav, the writing on the grave, and not to put on two clothes together. I looked up the taking off two clothes. Some people do say also not to take off two clothes together, but Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says it's not a problem. There's no problem taking off two clothes together. In Sif Cotton Zayin, Mishabur said also when you wash, the same as when you put on clothes, you honour the right. When you wash yourself, you should also honour the right. and wash the right before the left.
This is Gimel?
Sorry?
This is Gimel?
That was in Mishra Cotton Zion. 3 lines from the bottom. Okay. And then if we go back to the Shulchan Aruch, in Sif Vov, we saw also Leilech B'Koim Kufa, not to walk in a very straight, arrogant fashion, very upright. Below Yelech Dalad Amos B'Gidon Harosh, we saw not to walk 4 amos with an uncovered head, 4 amos being just under 2 meters. V'Yivdok Nikova, we said that before, after when he wakes up before davening, he has to check if he needs to be excused. Hagor the Ramah says V'Chasa Kol Gufoi, V'Yelech Yochik, he should cover his whole body, not go barefoot. We saw in the Mishnah Berurah.
Can I just ask a question? Not to walk with an erect posture. You refer to it as Arabic versus Jewish.
Sorry?
Is that actually
I thought it as being arrogant.
Arrogant?
Yeah.
Arrogant. Okay, good. All right.
No, yeah.
Okay. So an erect posture implies arrogance.
Yeah. Someone walking as if he owns the whole world.
Right.
What does the English translation say in your book? What does the English translation say in your book?
For erect posture. One should also not go for it calls it an erect posture.
I'll look for the Mishnah Berurah says.
Okay. Right, so the Ramah says to cover his body, not to walk barefoot in a place where one doesn't walk barefoot. Okay. We saw the Mishnah Berurah mentioned the midah chasidus, meaning a righteous thing to do, is even less than 4 amos, to be careful not to walk uncovered. And even when one goes to sleep, is also midah chasidus to have a head covering when one goes to sleep. We saw that one can put one's hand on one's head as a covering. We said it's not the best covering. Inside one can rely on it. Indoors, when one also has a roof, one can rely on this. Outdoors, one shouldn't. If one's couple blows off, then one should pull the sleeve over one's hand and then cover your head with the sleeve. We also saw that the reason for head covering, of course, is to remind you that Kodesh Baruch Hu is on top of us. It brings Yirah Shomayim, that you always remember that Kodesh Baruch Hu is above us.
What about the women? I mean, is the payout for tzniut?
The payer's for sneers, it's not for this at all. No, it's completely just for sneers. Okay, and let's go on now to Siman Gimel. We'll summarize most of Siman Beis. In Siman Gimel we saw Hanogas Beis HaKisei, also sneers, how to behave in the bathroom. We saw in Sif Aleph Kishikonis Beis HaKisei Yoma Hiskabdim Mechubodim. We saw the tefillah that says in the Gemara to tell the malachim who accompany us to wait outside when we go in. Nowadays we don't say it. We said because nowadays we say that we're not on that level. We have malachim accompanying us, and we mentioned this is different to Friday night. But Friday night the malachim accompanying us are not for our own honor; they're for the honor of the Shabbos, to see if we've honored Shabbos and to give us a bracha if they see that the house is all ready and the table's laid ready for Shabbos. So if base yehi tzonua beveis hakisei v'lo yigale atzmo ad sheyeshev, he should not uncover himself until he sits down. He should be tzonua also beveis hakisei. Hagor v'lo yelchu shnei anoshim biyachad. 2 people shouldn't go together. This is obviously nowadays no one would think of such a thing. This is talking about in those days when it was outside, and people that were perhaps even scared outside. They should go together into the same cubicle. Also, we shouldn't talk inside the toilet, and also he should close the door because of sneers. We mentioned that if he needs to talk for whatever reason, someone might come in. There's no lock, then we mentioned that he should use grunting noises. He can make noises, but he shouldn't talk for sneeristic reasons. Shouldn't talk on the phone. Sif Gimel, Im Rutsa Lemashmish B'Pir Tabas, Shua B'Kisim Liftoch Nekovov. Okay, we said that's not relevant nowadays. Sif Dalid, Sif Dalid Galat Mekim La'achog of Tefach U'Melefon of Tefachai. It says how much you should uncover himself. In the front of Tefach and behind 2 Tefachim. That's with the clothes that they had nowadays. With the clothes nowadays, today, it's obviously is relative, and the idea is to uncover oneself as much as necessary, but as no more than that. One shouldn't uncover parts that's unnecessary. As much as necessary, so you can do it in a clean, efficient fashion. If one has to do it, let's say on a teal outside, there's no conveniences there, and there's no walls. Then you should do it in facing northwest, north-south. You shouldn't do it east-west because the Shekhinah is in the west. We mentioned that number 1, Ketanim is okay in any direction. In Sivov, we saw that it's the same when going to sleep. One's together with one's wife, then one shouldn't sleep in this east-west direction, and preferably even when he's alone. Also, he shouldn't sleep east-west. We mentioned that the Achok and the Zohar actually says it the other way round, and one should dafka sleep east-west, not north-south. And because of that, so the Aruch says that we're not makpid on about which direction to sleep. The Mishnah Berurah is makpid. So if one can, then one should try and do like the Shulchan Aruch and not put one's bed and positions one bed with the head towards the north and the legs to the south. If one has the luxury of a room where one can do that. If not, one can rely on the Aruch HaShulchan that we're not makpid on it nowadays. Sif Zayin, Hamata Maimin Atoifim V'Lifnim, Yeshev Uponov Klapi HaKodesh, Lo Yeshev Uponov Klapi HaKodesh. If we saw that when one is even doing it, number 1, one should, if one can see the Beis HaMikdash, one shouldn't do it facing the Beis HaMikdash. Then Sif Ches, Kishenifne Basodim Achoy Agede Ifane Miyad, Ubebeke Sachek Admokim Sheyuchachav Elirois Piroi. If he's excusing himself again when he's outside on a tool in the field somewhere and people are around him, if he can go behind the fence, that's great. If not, then he has to distance himself from the group of people where people can't see him. Sif Tes.
Can I do the question? The east-west issue. That's right. The Shekhinah is always in the west, right? But the Beis HaMikdash is not always in the east, depending on where you are.
Correct.
So the issue is the Shekhinah, not the Beis HaMikdash.
The Shekhinah is in the west, which is why in the Beis HaMikdash itself, the Kodesh Kodoshim is on the west side of the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash is not always on the west of where we are. That's correct. Right. That's why we said that if you're in a place where you can see the Beis HaMikdash, one mustn't do it towards the Beis HaMikdash. Right. Whereas anywhere in the world, we mentioned that one shouldn't do it in the direction of facing west. Right. In the east-west direction. In Siftes we saw not push too hard for medical reasons. We saw in Siftes lo yikaneach b'yad yamin, one shouldn't wipe with his right hand because that's the hand that that's the hand that he ties his tefillin with, Mishnah Berurah said. The Gemara brings a number of reasons. The reason Mishnah Berurah brings is because he ties his tefillin with that hand. And for the same reason, he shouldn't, with his left hand, he shouldn't use the middle finger, which is the finger he ties his tefillin on. One should try and do this. If one can't, again, we mentioned that that some poskim say that singers will use paper nowadays and the hands don't get dirty, then it's less problematic. There's something to be reliant on if it's difficult. Okay, so Yud Aleph is not relevant the way we write it for nowadays. So if Yud Beis, if Hana B'Tzinis B'Layla K'moi B'Yom, there's no difference if it's light or dark. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the same idea, we have to have Tzinis in the Beis HaKisei, in the toilet, whether it's light or day, whether it's night or dark, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there. In Yud Gimel we saw Lo Yashtin Mu'umod. One should be careful when one does the number one, that one doesn't splash on one's feet. Therefore, now that if one does it inside a urinal or inside a toilet, then obviously there's no problem. If one's doing it outside, then one should be careful what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. That you should stand sheyamid b'mokum kavoya, you should stand somewhere high, or you should do it onto soft soil where it's going to be absorbed. Then if you're dalid, now we've moved on. Till now it was all the halachas to do with tznius. And now we move on to a couple of other halachas to do with the toilet, which are not tznius halachas, other halachas. We saw to be careful not to hold or rub one's limb, because it can cause wasting shechvas zera, which is a big avero. In Siftes Vov, we saw one can, if one needs to lift it up in order to, for convenience purposes, then one can use the sack, the testicles, to push it up. In Siftes Zayin, we said also, even for someone who's married, he can hold it, but only in order to have himself go to the toilet. And Siftes Zayin, we saw one may not hold in if one needs to go. It's also because of Baal Tashaktu, doing something disgusting. We saw also for number one is also Baal Tashaktu, but holding wind is not a problem Baal Tashaktu. And we saw that there's an issue of Kovod Abrius. If it's in a place where it's going to compromise his honor, for example, there's no place where he could do it in private, then this overrides the issue of Baal Tashaktu, and one is allowed to hold it in. Similarly, also someone who is and he can hold it in because of problem Kovod Abrius. Everyone's going to notice he's going, therefore overrides Baal Tashaktu. Okay, that's a brief summary.
It's interesting.
In the Mishnah Berurah we didn't on Sif Gimel.
On Sif Gimel, summaries in the Mishnah Berurah. On one Sif Gimel, you don't want Sif Gimel. And you know, Simon Gimel, sorry. Simon Gimel, let's summarize the Mishnah Berurah. We talked about some of them outside. We talked about grunting in the toilet if one needs to talk. We summarized most of them. Most of them I summarized outside as I read the Shulchan Aruch. The additional parts I added in were brief summaries.
It's an interesting thing that usually we think of something abominable as something that is evident to the world. A disgusting situation, right? But in this case, it's exactly the opposite. It's what's internal is perceived as abominable, and even breaking wind is not considered abominable, which is to the world. It's very internal kind of.
And this is you're mentioning this by this about Tashaktu. This is also by this of sneers the whole way through the Sif. Some people think of sneers as just what people can see. Right. Whereas we see here that sneers is also in the toilet. And to add to that, it's not just also. If you remember, first of all, there's a Gemara that says there's someone who's eulogizing. Someone died. The eulogizer said about the person who died that he was sonua. So one of the Rabbanim says, how do you know he was sonua? Did you ever follow him into the bathroom? You don't know if he was sonua. The Gemara says, Ein kum sonua ela lemisha sonua beis hakisei. You only know someone's sonua if he's sonua in the beis hakisei. That's the main area of sneers. Not in front of people, in private. Right. And we mentioned also, what's the makafet sneers? We saw the Be'er Halacha said the smak, Sefer Mitzvah's Kotzer, says it's a mitzvah deraisa. Right? Then we said, what's the source? The source is how a soldier goes to the toilet. That's the whole source. Sneers is a private thing. It's also in public. But it's not what people think, that it's just how they... the world nowadays is all about externalities. How they look in front of other people. Right? We see from these halachas it's completely not like that. The important thing is to be tzonua in private when no one can see you, to do it in a tzonua way. It's completely opposite to the worldly view on the subject. Let's have a look now. We have a few minutes left. We're not going to get through all of it. Let's just have a quick look. It's a double-sided sheet. It's two simonim from Igros Moshe. One is in Chelek Aleph, Simon Aleph. Orach Chaim Chelek Aleph, Simon Aleph. And the other one is Yerodei Chelek Gimel, Simon Mem Zayin. one on each side of the page. So start on the one which is, you see as it's the first siman it has the title because it's the first siman. It's Chelik Aleph Siman Aleph. The computer printed the left to right as if it was English, right? So the first page we have to start on the left and then move to the right. Right? We're starting with this page and then we'll move to that side of the page. The printer prints it the wrong way. So the title is Bekisui Miktas HaRosh Le'inyan Leilech V'Rechoy V'Leinu Bracha. Is it good enough to cover part of one's head, a small part, or does one have to cover most of the head? So he starts off, Hine B'dvar Kisor Miktas HaRosh, where there's an arrow, right? The first paragraph I put an arrow there. Hine B'dvar Kisor Miktas HaRosh Kagon B'Yamaka Ketana. And so it's interesting that the Ramosha Feinstein puts in words in English or Yiddish and he writes it in Hebrew letters. So they cover part of his head with the yarmulke, with a small yarmulke. Can he walk through the street with that? Many people, even Yirei Hashem, walk on the road like that. The person who's writing the question says the Moshe Feinstein that he saw tshuva mehagonu b'shlomo kluger, Sefer Aleph L'chos Shlomo, one of the Gedolim of Europe, 150 to 200 years ago. He writes in his tshuva Aleph L'chos Shlomo, Shlomo Kluger writes, the bekisu miktas materak proportion amos, covering part of one's head is only good enough to walk less than 4 amos, 2 meters. Begilu kol harosh oise af proportion amos. The Moshe Feinstein is summarizing the question of the question. And the questioner asked, that he saw that Shlomo Kluger writes that one has to cover most of one's head, covering part of one's head is not good enough. Covering a small part is only good enough to walk less than 4 amos. But to walk more than 4 amos, one has to cover the majority of one's head. So he's asking Moshe Feinstein what he thinks about it. Is this the halacha like with Shlomo Kluger or not? That's the question. We're not going to go through all the rise of Moshe Feinstein. We're going to jump to the conclusion, which is on the second page. Again, it's the same side. If you're opening your sheet straight out, not folded, it's on the same side on the right part of the page. I also did I put an arrow there in the margin. It's by a paragraph that starts V'lochein. Right? V'lochein lemaisa. He goes the whole tshuva. In the tshuva, he proves. He brings rights against Shlomo Kluger. V'lochein lemaisa roitze lahachmir v'lochosh ladas hagresha. Someone who wants to be machmir and be choshesh for the opinion of Shlomo Kluger, he should cover most of his head. Most hats are good enough for this. And the larger yarmulkes, the larger kippot are large enough for this to cover most of the head. But according to the letter of the law, Moshe Feinstein's opinion is one doesn't have to be, one not obliged to follow Shlomo Kluger's approach. He's an individual opinion. It's also, we're not talking about a proper issa. Covering one's head is just a minhag. It's very interesting how he defines it. Even though that nowadays, the whole of Yisrael have done this minhag. It's a minhag which the whole of Klal Yisrael do. When you have a minhag that the whole of Klal Yisrael does, it takes on the gedolim, the boundaries of an issa. It takes on the stringency of an issa because the whole of Klal Yisrael do. But even so, seeing as Shlomo Kluger is just an individual opinion, one doesn't have to be machmir for it, and it's good enough to cover to have a couple that covers just part of the head.
For example, a kippur suga.
Well, there's some that are big and some that are small. Kippur suga that cover the whole head, and most of the time it covers the head. One that covers a small part of the head, but Moshe Feinstein says it's okay. One who wants to be machmir to use a bigger couple to be choshesh Shlomo Kluger, that's an excellent thing to do, but one doesn't have to. That's this tshuva from Moshe. If we look on the other side of the page, this is the tshuva from Yeridei Chelik Gimel Mem Zayin, and it actually covered 3 pages. So I had to cut. If you look at the top, it comes out Igros Moshe the wrong way round, because I've taken the second column of the first page, the whole of the second page, and then the first column of the third page. Okay, so that's why it's come out the top here, the title with Igros Moshe the wrong way round. Okay. So there's actually 2. There's an arrow at the bottom of the first column, right? There's actually 2. If you see it split the siman up into different parts. So if you look at the different paragraphs, one's entitled base, one's gimel, one's daled, hey, rov, right? There's actually two entitled Gimel.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's a mistake here in the printer, right? They've done two Gimels.
Right.
We're going to look. The ones that are relevant to us are Gimel and Hey. We're going to look at part of Gimel and part of Hey. So if we look at Gimel, I've just put an arrow there by the first Gimel. Okay? It's talking about Bidvar Lil Voish B'mito Kshu Mechusa B'asmicha B'Begodim. It's talking about getting dressed in bed. We saw the Mishabot talked about getting dressed in bed. Shemachasa Mekom Mishadak Neis Mechusa, one has to cover the parts that are supposed to be covered. Shebimishbos in basic Komnal, because of Gamba and Pilois Shisach B'Dovs and Tachas Asmicha. The Mishabot mentions, I don't remember if we saw this, that one should put also one's socks on under the covers. So the question is asking if one should be careful about this, putting on one's socks under the covers. The question himself mentioned to Moshe Feinstein that it should be a difference about where one lives, if this is the minhag where one lives. Says Moshe Feinstein, it depends on the place one lives and the time, the tkufa, the time that one lives in. If this is a part of one body that's generally one covers inside the home. If people walk around barefoot in the home, then obviously one doesn't need to put on one's socks under the covers. It doesn't mean one has to get dressed under the covers the same way people walk around outside. Definitely, in every tkufa, whenever one lived, wherever one lives, people dress differently at home, inside, to how they dress outside. There's definitely a difference. So there's no halacha one has to dress inside the same one dresses outside.
So he's immediately, right from the beginning, separated this from being a halacha and making it into a minhag. Because he's saying it depends on where you live and when you live.
Right. It's a halacha. No, the halacha depends on how one dresses. It's not that this halacha is a minhag. It's a halacha. However, the halacha is to define in the halacha to not show parts of your body which the minhag of that place are not to reveal.
The halacha is the cover up.
The halacha depends on how people are nohig in that place.
How you define it depends on the minhag of the place. Right.
Now we're just halfway through how he's defining it. Afterwards we'll explain how he defines it. He's in the middle of defining that very clearly how one has to dress. So he's saying that first of all he's saying that there's definitely a difference between inside and outside. There's no halacha one has to dress outside the same way, inside the house the same way when people dresses outside. And therefore obviously one doesn't need to get dressed under the covers the same way one's going to walk around outside. Only when one davens, even though we've mentioned that the reason for this halacha is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere, right? There's a difference between dressing in a way that we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching us, He's there, to standing before Hashem. The halacha of standing before Hashem is only in davening. Before, and when we daven, that's called your omid b'fnei HaMelech, and one has to dress accordingly, as if one is standing before a king. This is not the same as what we're talking about now when one's walking around outside, when one's inside one's house, that the shechin is there. Right? One doesn't have to dress as if I'm standing before a king. One has to dress in an appropriate way for that place, knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. Right? And every place, it's relative to that place. Outside has to dress relative to outside, inside has to be relative to inside, in the bathroom has to be relative to the bathroom, and the toilet has to be relative. Every place has to be relevant to the place that he's in, and he has to bear in mind HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. If it is not the same as tefillah, which is omid b'fnei HaMelech, you're standing before the king, and there you have to dress in a way appropriate for standing before the king. Okay? That's the general idea. And just one other sentence I wanted to read, if we jump a few lines. I'll just... If you look, in the paragraph we're just reading, if you look about 8 lines from the end of that paragraph.
From the bottom?
No, from the end of that paragraph. From the bottom of that paragraph.
From the bottom of that paragraph.
It's about halfway down the page.
Aval?
Yes, about where it says Aval. Middle of the line, about approximately the middle of the page. אבל אם כן הוא רק כשאינשי מגנן זה גם למי שיושב כן בבייסק. When people look down on it, even to when people dress that way at home. שצריך להיות לובש אף בבייסק. בזמן שאפשר אצלו אינשי. אבל אם אין חושן זה לגנאי, כשיושב כן בבייסק, אין להחשב זה לגנאי. ויהיה ליחס כן בבייסק. You have to think, how would people think of me if they knew I dressed this way at home? That's how he's saying it. Right? Yeah, when you have to dress at home the way you would be, if people knew that you dressed that way at home, they wouldn't look down on you. That's the way one has to walk around the house. One mustn't walk around the house in a way that if people knew that you walked around the house that way, they would think it as a gnai. Right? That's his definition of how to get dressed in each various place you're in, at home, in the various different rooms. Is think about if people knew I was dressed this way in this place, how would they think of it? That's how he says you should. That's the way you should think of it to yourself.
This is not a question of tzniut. This is a question of respect for the fact that Hashem is present.
This is a question of tznius, but it's very possible that is the definition of tznius. Sounds like that is the definition of tznius. My Rosh Kollel, it's a slight chiddush how he defines it. He takes it a little steps further. My Rosh Kollel, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkovitz from Yerushalayim, he defines tznius as self-dignity. It's taking it a step further. But the way you summarize it is an excellent summary of how we've seen it till now. Let's continue now. Let's have a look now at the last, run out of time, at Os Hey, on the last column. The last column, also another point that we've seen in the Mishnah Berurah. He was asked if one has to act the way we've seen in the halachas of Beis HaKisei, does it also apply to hatolas me'raglai, going into a cubicle, closing the door? It does apply also to a number 1, or is it only if we're going to gedolim to number 2? And on the 5th line, I underlined the word da'af. Right? Da'af shebimidinoseinu shu hakol b'bayis ve'en tzorich latzeis hachutza ve'yefshel asos gam b'mechitzos. Nowadays that we have toilets, we have bathrooms, and it's possible therefore to always have mechitzos, always have walls, always to do it inside a closed area, so that it's in a snistic way. When Moshe Feinstein says that he thinks if Chazal were around nowadays, they would have said that even because it's so easy, they would have said that one should act sunua even when one does hatolas me'raglayim, and they would have made the takona that one should do it inside the cubicle. But seeing as in those days it wasn't possible, it was, and therefore, they said that one could do it in a place even without mechitzas. Therefore, he said the takon of Chazal was only on number 2 on gedolim. Number 1, one doesn't need mechitzas. However, he thinks that Chazal, if they were around the days, they would have said one should do it in a place with mechitzas, and therefore
because it's so easy to be tzanua.
That's right, because it's so easy nowadays. That's right, and therefore he says that one should try, and therefore continues. If we continue. He mentions also nowadays that there's countries also where they haven't got it. In Africa, the countries they haven't got it. So therefore, even nowadays, even where we live, it's not a chiyuv. One doesn't have to do it inside a cubicle. We can't say it's osa. One should. It is a correct thing to do because it's so easy nowadays. It is a correct thing to do inside the cubicle with mechitzos. Given to dovo kal thing is so easy. As he continues, that's the idea he mentions. But even that if he thinks if Chazal were nowadays, they probably would have been gozer. They weren't gozer. So it's not a chiyuv. One can do it in urina. One can do it in a place where there are no mechitzas. However, seeing it's so easy, one should try and do it inside a cubicle if we can. He mentions afterwards that if there's no Beis HaKisei ponoi, if they're all taken up, there's no place, then you can do it in a urina.
It's a curious thing because from a point of snua, today it's easier to do. But the issue of direction becomes actually more difficult because you're working with the appliances that are available to you at that point. And you might... Truth is, I never think about east and west in that situation, but obviously you're supposed to.
Right.
So I guess the question would be...
That's only...
No, but it was only when he was outside. The direction issue was outside.
Right.
The direction issue didn't apply when he's inside a cubicle. In Sif Hay, where we saw the direction issue, it says, it's only in the place of no mechitzas. Inside the cubicle, the direction issue doesn't apply.
not
Direction issue was only outside.